Finally, they're gone. I can keep these pennies to myself now.
Hey everyone. Yes, I know I did the poll, and yes, I know the mushroom block farm won, but you gotta hear me out on this one. This one came in a close second, and I want to put my name on it. I'll do the mushroom block farm next, I promise, but I know that I'm almost as slow as it takes to find someone willing to animate OPM Season 3, so I'm just gonna do this one first. Anyway, let's talk about Pigmen. So I think a lot of you at this point have seen what an aggro-based Pigmen farm is. The fundamentals are the same, even for a very low-end farm. You kinda just hit them with a weak projectile, and then they come running at you. And of course, you don't need to kill them for them to drop XP, and you have some alarm pigmen to keep the chain going, yada yada, we've seen it all before. There are other ways to lure the pigmen, however, pigmen take a fixed 2 seconds to even notice the turtle egg, and then they slowly have to walk over to it. Aggro takes half of that time, and they sprint towards their target. However, while all that speed-based buff is fun, player-based aggro farms have a massive setback. Mobs cannot spawn within 24 blocks of the player, so any decent lifetime is just completely destroyed. And because they have to run longer, most people have just stepped away from player-based aggro farms. However, y'all kinda did this to yourselves because Pigmen don't aggro exclusively to the player, they can aggro to any mob that can deal damage to them. So if we can get another mob in here to take the aggro that isn't a player, we don't need to follow this 24 block restriction. There's a good roster of mobs in the game that can damage Pigmen, however most of them don't make the cut in terms of a farm. Iron Golems and Zoglins are large melee mobs, and as of recent updates their reach is the exact same as Pigmen, so they will eventually get hit and killed. Skeletons shooting at a golem can work, but not only do you have to transport a skeleton, you have to deal with all the arrow entities and make space for a giant-ass golem in the farm and prevent that from hitting Pigmen. Johnny Vindicators have the same melee issue, however a Johnny Raid Captain commanding a pillager to shoot at Pigmen would work if the crossbow didn't break. Hunting piglins would have the same crossbow issue if they weren't too scared to even fire their crossbow to begin with. Good luck trying to get all the pieces necessary for a Johnny Raid Captain commanding a witch to throw healing potions at a damaged Ravager. Speaking of Ravagers, their range is somehow worse than Iron Golems now. A Johnny Raid Captain commanding an Evoker sounds like some lore to an abandoned evil lab. Shulkers would work if we had something to aggro them with. Ender Dragon. And then there's Llamas. Oh wait, you forgot llamas existed? You know what, that's fine, I keep forgetting pandas exist. Llamas spit at wild wolves every 2 seconds with a spit projectile. So if we could get Pigmen in between, we could get a free aggro chain. However, first we need to protect the wolf. Spit deals half a heart of damage, and that will eventually kill the wolf. But apparently llama spit is one of the most powerful projectiles in the game? They one-shot armor stands, they pierce boats, so what the heck even works? If I had any idea why this worked, I would tell you, but I seriously don't. It gets worse when you can open the trapdoor. And that it hits scans Pigmen in front of it. And that it works all the way back to 1.11. I know at least one of the 40 devs are watching this video, so is this a bug? Maybe? But if armor stands can survive in flowing lava, then maybe they shouldn't be one-shot by spit. I don't know, you tell me. Anyway, so we got working Llamadule now. If only there was some way we could lure the Pigmen to get hit by the llama. Oh, wait a minute! Yeah, honestly, I'm surprised no one has been able to piece this together. Using a different mob for aggro has been known about for a long time, and in fact has been showcased by Sidecraft like 4 years ago. I'm just surprised no one has pieced the puzzles together. It's almost as if no one has seen these videos. Oh, now I get it. I still don't get it. Anyway, so the first thing I did, now with a fully working Llamadule, is build this thing. It's an EXP focused farm with one Llamadule in the middle. One thing to note is that there are 7 platforms in this farm, simply because when an alarm pigmen alert other pigmen, the height in which they do so is a fixed 22 blocks, so considering baby pigmen exist, 7 platforms is the maximum you can have that works reliably. There are extra turtle eggs in the middle, and that is so that it can help cycle pigmen until the thing can prime itself. And the way the pigmen get aggro is that the ones on the middle floor, they pathfind onto the honey blocks thinking they could get to the turtle egg, and once the llama hits them, all hell breaks loose. However, I don't think this is the farm that you are looking for. Despite it dropping XP, the pigmen are still not killed by a player. In fact, they're killed by llamas, so they don't even drop gold ingots. Well, that's a bummer. Well, I think that there is something I should tell you with this farm though, despite it not producing any drops. This farm spawns 29,000 pigmen per hour. For reference, this is 22,000 pigmen per hour. Anyway, the next step is obvious. Make a ripoff, but better. One company already did it, why shouldn't I? Now, this farm spawns 32,000 pigmen per hour. They have an average lifetime of just under 7.5 seconds, which is just a little bit more than the amount of time it takes for them to run 24 blocks. And in terms of drops, I actually had to wire a whole different collection because the amount of drops just overwhelmed a simple line of carpet hoppers, which means that we struck gold, and I have every single reason to say that pun, because not only are we breaking 100,000 drops with this, we are breaking 130,000 drops with this, which means around 970 gold blocks per hour. And the funny thing is that this is a surface level farm. I could have easily done boat looting. I could have easily made the pigmen run into portals. This could have easily have been like 2,500,000. But I'm not that kind of guy. Anyway, some other things to note with the farm is I actually kind of lied earlier. It is actually possible to get 8 platforms. The height in which the pigmen alert other pigmen is not rounded to the nearest block, so you could actually skew them by making them sit in boats, so that way you could get 8 platforms reliably. The spawn platforms follow this slightly hexagonal shape. If you want to understand why, check out this video by Whitestone Jazz. He goes into good depth as to how to optimize spawning platforms. The drop chute is probably one of the widest I have seen. I went with a full 3-block drop chute, and the reason why I went with this very wide drop chute is so that the pigmen in the back over here can turn the corner tighter. I've tried some other methods to see if I could at least prevent pigmen from falling and dying along the sides. However, every time I tried, this 3-wide drop chute came out on top despite this small little loss. There are still turtle eggs to cycle the pigmen before the farm can prime itself. However, pigmen search for turtle eggs 3 blocks above and below the block they are standing on. So 1 turtle egg can cover 3 platforms, and thus this farm only uses 6 turtle eggs for having 16 platforms. Back to the platforms, this top platform is completely flat, and that is because when the pigmen are aggro, they want to pathfind as close as possible to the llama, and the block they think that is closest is the blocks directly above and below the llama. And for these pigmen up here, they think they could drop down to this layer and go onto this block over here. That also explains this little wall that goes around every other platform. These are here mainly so that the pigmen only think they could come in through this direction into the drop chute and down the middle. The walls here, these are mainly just so that the pigmen cut the turn tighter. The top platform is also surrounded by string because the pigmen pathfinding code is abysmal, and even though they're fireproof, they still want to avoid magma blocks, so to make sure that they don't walk along the glass pack spawning roof, you just have some blocks they think they can't pathfind to lining the entire thing. The glass platform is also up here. I'm not sure if it's the most optimal, however, the ones on the edge I did lower by 1 block just because I can. One other interesting thing to note is the trapdoor pattern. The trapdoor should always be on the side of the spawning platform. The reason being is that if you have the trapdoors on this side, pigmen will actually jump before they fall down the drop chute, and that increases their lifetime. Having the trapdoors face the other way ensures that they only run into the drop chute. One other thing to note with these spawning platforms is these buttons going around the drop chute. This is to ensure that the chicken jockeys die. If the chicken jockeys spawn too close to the drop chute, the chicken won't die, and not only do chicken jockeys fall slowly, they are the only mob that can fit through the trapdoor gap of the Llamadule and can actually kill the llama. This is also the Llamadule. It is pretty tiny. The slabs around the wolf are just to make sure that the minecart doesn't get nudged around. These top slabs over here just make sure that the llama has direct eye contact with the alarm pigmen and is fully encased in blocks just to make sure that the pigmen don't accidentally hurt the llama through the corners of blocks. The collection is a simple hopperless one that just uses carpets, pushing the items over, and then they just get staircase down onto the center chest where Honey Block pushes it over, aligns it, and Slime Block just launches it over. The player is still AFK at like 182, so you do have to be a little bit careful as to where you place the farm. However, you could, of course, just take beds and take matters into your own hands. Sword is maxed out like you would expect, but this time with Smite, and the beacons, one has strength 2, so that way the player is more likely to one-shot the pigment, and the other one has regeneration for obvious purposes, and haste so that the player can attack every 10 game ticks. To get the wolf and the llama into the farm, it's pretty simple. Just roll in the minecart. They don't take damage on magma blocks when they're in the minecart. Just be careful with the llama though. Their eye level extends into the third block, so just don't suffocate it. Now I know Mojang did express interest in either reworking or removing aggro back in like 1.16. However, we are approaching 1.21 without any news on that. But I do think this farm will stand the test of time simply because I don't think that Mojang wants to remove social aggro. Pigmen are not the only mob with social aggro, and I think social aggro on Pigmen is a pretty cool touch. I think that they were more interested in removing the fact that aggro Pigmen drop XP no matter who the target was, and probably chain aggro as well. I believe this farm bypasses both of those issues. For one, the llama is constantly attacking the wolf, so it will occasionally hit Pigmen to refresh any aggro in case aggro chaining gets fixed, and at the bottom the player is still killing the Pigmen, so it should drop XP. Before I do close this out, if any of you want to mess with Llamadules, I do want to issue a small little warning. Try not to make the platforms too big. Initially, I had some spawning platforms, some spawning blocks over here. And what would happen is that the pigmen that would spawn out here, they would go straight down this aisle, and then nowhere they turn right. I think it's because they think they could go through this corner, probably because they didn't recognize these as impassable walls. And then once they get over here, they realize they can't go this way, and then they gotta go back around. It just increases their lifetime. So, if anything, I kept this a little bit smaller than I think the limit is, just to make sure the pigmen, for the most part, pathfind reliably. Anyway, if you were early to this video, I'm still doing the 3-day rule simply because I still stand 0 chance against any content thief. But genuinely though, for everyone who's watching, I do wish the best day for you. Stay chill, drink water, and have a good one.